Okay. All right, now this one we're recording,
Yeah.
and so we'll set it up Saturday at your convenience, and I'll just let you run through the slides.
Okay.
Okay, so that's great. I appreciate that, and a couple of other people who missed it told me they'd appreciate that. So, but this week it'll be there. So if anybody really gets tired of listening to me talk all the time and doesn't want to interrupt me, and which is fine to interrupt me. One thing Dawn will be doing is kind of watching the chat if anybody wants to leave a chat notice about anything. So but
I'm gonna run get a drink of water. Be right back.
So anyway, it's past time, and why don't we begin?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm going to do is go through some pictures that we have made on about 3 or 4 trips into the Middle East or into Greece and Turkey, and places that Paul had been, places we've talked about, and things that happened are in this ensemble of pictures. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is a friend of mine named Jan Sassaman, whose father was stationed on Cyprus, and with a government agency that I can't mention, he was there for several years in the late 50s. Jan even went through high school there, but he amassed a bunch of pictures in the late 50s and early 60s of some of these places, Ephesus and Antioch, Syrian Antioch, and all other kinds of places. And Jan lent them to me, and some of those are in this show. So it kind of spans our last trip to that part of the country, which is 2012, and all the way back to Mr. Sassaman in the late 1950s. So with that, I'll try to identify those as we go through them. But I will go ahead, and I'm going to share screen now and kind of give you a look at what's going on here. I'm also, well, I think I did that. I won't be able to see you now because I put my control bar out of the space on my screen. So I will count on you all staying awake, and Dawn, if you're there and then somebody puts up their hand, just let me know. Will you break in on my blather? I got this map out to show kind of the area of the world that Paul's travels covered, and what some of the names were in those days. And I will identify with little red blotches places that we're going to be talking about from time, interrupting from time to time. So here we go. And this one tells you where we're going to be looking at: Tarsus, Antioch, Damascus, Jerusalem, and believe it or not, Petra, which is now in Jordan. Unfortunately, since I started this late, doing this late today, I haven't finished the other slides, the other map slides. So here we go from where we are. This starts where Paul started. This is the area around Tarsus in what is now southeastern Turkey, and we know that the Greek and the Roman city of Tarsus is now under the Turkish, the modern city of Tarsus, But this shows some of the area outside of Tarsus, and this, according to Grant Sassaman, is a homestead in that part of Turkey. This picture is of a seacoast town just in that same area. And this is the Mediterranean Sea. This is where Paul, if he sailed to Tarsus or sailed from Tarsus, this is where he'd probably sail from. So this is as much as we have of the first part of Paul's life, and that is up until the time he was probably a young teenager and sent to study in Jerusalem. So here's Jerusalem. This is the old quarter of Jerusalem. We went there in 2009. And one of the things that impresses me about Jerusalem is all of these old buildings have this same white stone construction mode, and it really it blends nicely. The old Roman Cardo in Jerusalem is now at least one story underground. Okay, and this is what you see if you want to see what Jerusalem looked like in the first century. It's been excavated and covered over with shops, as you might expect. You enter that area, through places like this, and just walk and kind of get the feeling of what Jerusalem was like at that time. If you've been to Jerusalem, you've probably seen this model at the National Museum there. And it's a wonderful model of all of Jerusalem. I put this picture of the temple in to make the point that Paul and Gamaliel probably spent a lot of time in the temple as Paul was being educated as a very bright young rabbi. And this is kind of looking down, and you can see the Holy of Holies in the middle, and then beyond it is this very large courtyard where most of the business of Jerusalem, I think, was carried out at that time. And this is the third temple, Bob? You probably know that for sure. Is this the third?
Solomon's temple was first, and then Ezra rebuilt it, or rebuilt the temple, but then also Herod, I think, expanded it and made it more glorious. So that's the one that Jesus would have known, was Herod's.
Yeah. So that would be the same one as this. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the third.
Okay. Now I'm going to skip Damascus because I haven't been there. But I have been in what was known as the Arabian Desert. And this is north between Amman, Jordan, and Petra. And this is what it looked like. I'm sure they didn't have nice hydro dams that were providing water for the people. But can you imagine the valleys and hills that look somewhat like this? This is what the Jews and the Greeks and everybody at that time considered to be a wilderness, and you can see why. Today, it's not always a wilderness. When on our way to Petra, we came across these shepherds with a flock of sheep. I don't know what they were eating, but they were doing very well. And of course, an event like that means the tourists have to get out and take pictures. So they did. Further south, we ran into this, didn't run into it, and we saw from the road this wonderful old fort, which we were told was a Crusader fort. So 1,000 years after the time of Paul. We do believe that Paul probably in his time in the desert got to Petra, because at that time it was a fairly bustling trading city. If any of you have been to Petra, if you haven't been to Petra, let me say that this picture may confuse you, but the way you enter as a tourista these days is through this very narrow
Seek,
Sikh, S-I-K?
SIQ.
SIQ, which is just a sort of a hole in the wall. And you come down this very narrow passageway. I think we were off the horses by then. And then you come out where in the building that is known as the Treasury. And this is the way Petra was done. The public buildings and homes and everything else were carved out of this fairly it's not a dense rock. It's easily cut and fashioned. And further into the city,
Looks to me like it's a home.
something wrong, Elizabeth?
Yeah, we don't have any picture.
We do. Yeah.
I don't think it's your problem, it's my
We
problem.
have audio, we don't have a picture.
Well, you need to see this. It's really neat. It reminds me of the catacomb like Montezuma Castle, where you can go up into the places.
And like in Rome?
No, I'm talking about here where the Indians were.
Oh,
They built the cliff dwellers.
Mesa Verde.
Mesa Verde? Yeah. This is further into Petra. And there's lots more ruin here than there is reconstruction at this point. But this is a Roman, this is from Roman times, and it was kind of what the Romans call a basilica, or a meeting area. But this was a leftover from Imperial Rome. Okay, we've left the desert now, and we've gone to Syrian Antioch. This is the port city near Syrian Antioch. And again, this goes back to 1960. You can see it's right on the ocean. Antioch was about 10 to 15 miles away, or is 10 to 15 miles away. But now we're going to move from this part of the world over to and here's Tarsus. We're going to move over to Cyprus, central Turkey, which at that time, here is Roman Galatia, right? And the Greek Galatia was down here. He used Galatians in his writings, and he was talking about these first 3 or 4 churches that he established on the first missionary journey. And then from there, we'll go over to Hierapolis, and then, believe it or not, over to Ephesus and the cities along the coast. But this part sort of concentrates on what Paul saw and confronted in central Turkey. And this is on the island of Cyprus. And for the life of me, I forget the name of this city, but it is on the eastern coast of Cyprus. It's Salamis, and it's on the eastern side of end of Cyprus, and where Paul and Barnabas landed when they first on that first missionary journey. This, by the way, is the home area of Barnabas, and this is Barnabas's tomb in Salamis. And back again, this is a 1960 age picture. This is on the west end of Cyprus, at Paphos, Paphos. This is the harbor, and apparently this is where Paul managed to get to know the governor, the Roman governor of Cyprus, and got him to convert or to embrace Christianity. So, and this is ruins also at Paphos, and these pictures are also 1958 age pictures. Now from Paphos, Paul and Barnabas sailed to the Turkish mainland. They didn't find the place looking like this, but this is the modern city of Antalya, and it is on the coast now and sits beside the river that the ships coming into where he landed, which is Perga, the ships would sail past this area. It is not, when we were there in 2006 or 7 or 8, the years passed by so quickly, I'm sorry. But anyway, this was a resort area, as you can tell, for Russian tourists. It's where they went to catch the rays. It was kind of the Miami Beach of central Russia. And it's a fairly large city. There's some Roman leftover. This was a gate put there for Hadrian, the emperor, in like this, I think this 2nd or 3rd century. It's a very trendy place. It's a pleasant place to be. This, however, is at this date not so pleasant, but it's an interesting study. This Perga, which is the city where I think Paul spent a little time either recovering from an illness or trying to figure out what to do next. But he did spend time here before going into the inland, Turkish inland. It's a typical Roman city. This is the agora, and with the line up for shops. And after leaving Perga, Paul and Barnabas went up through I think these were the Cilician gates, and through this lovely mountain country. This was a natural lake we passed, and as the main highway from Antalya and Perga comes up through to the Turkish inland. So beautiful sights to see. And of course, right on the other side of the mountains are the Turkish lakes. Again, very nice. You get further inland and it gets a little more arid looking and whatnot. We did not visit, when we were on this part of the trip, any of the archaeological digs at Syrian or at the Pisidian Antioch, or what are they? Lystra, Derby, and those are the only four I remember. Three. But they would look, I think, something like this. Remember our friend?
Yeah, you're talking about Adam Hamilton?
Yes, exactly.
Adam
Thank you.
Hamilton.
Sorry.
When you get old, things get harder to
Yeah.
remember.
But this is kind of like some of the things that he had seen. on
Now,
his-
Polly's, this your slide, or was this the 1950s?
No, that was mine.
Okay.
That was my picture. This one is another a stop that we didn't, that Adam Hamilton didn't make. This is a city called Hierapolis,
Yeah.
and it's east of Ephesus, and I'm pretty sure that this was a city that when Paul was spending his 3 years or so in Ephesus, he probably visited many times. There's no record of it. There's no record of any Christian activities there, but he was working this part of the country out of Ephesus.
What town is this?
Hierapolis. It's
Rockless,
Hierapolis.
good maps.
Hierapolis.
And it's got a lot of,
Travertine Cliffs. We're going to get there.
Well, he wrote a letter to the Colossians, isn't that in the Colossae in the same area?
It is in the same area. It's a neighbor.
But is not mentioned in Acts that Paul visited there, but it's possible he did
Oh yeah,
while he was in Ephesus and maybe this city too.
Some other
exactly.
people started churches in some of those
Yeah,
places.
well, some other people may have started churches and he went to visit.
Sure. This is the Travertine Rocks. Hierapolis sits on the top of a a hillside, and like a lot of the Greek Roman cities at that time, that's where they preferred to build. And people, if angry hordes were going to attack them, they'd have to run uphill a long way. And not only that, but Hierapolis is set behind this unbelievable amount of travertine rocks, which makes it not only a archaeological site, but a tourist attraction where you can come bathe yourself in not only your feet, but there is a very nice pool there too. In this
Cleopatra used to.
Cleopatra's pool. Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
And so this is, highly mineralized water and supposedly extremely good for your sore feet. You went in it, didn't you, dear?
Yes, it wasn't fun.
No, it wasn't fun.
No, it was very,
Okay.
Is that snow over there?
No, it's the rock.
The rock's
It's
white?
It's travertine rock,
Mm.
and it's deposits of minerals that have come out of these springs for years and years and years.
it's the kind of thing you find in Yellowstone, in the northern part of Yellowstone. Mammoth Springs or
Mammoth Hot Springs,
Yeah,
yeah,
Mammoth.
it's travertine, and it's just really incredible when you drive up there. It does look like the whole mountain is snow capped.
Paul, what is the smoke in the background?
Up here,
Yeah. It's like a wild
I cannot figure that. We were there when we were there in was it in the fall, late fall? And it might have been farmers clearing fields.
Mhm.
It didn't seem, we came that direction.
from the direction.
We came from that direction over this way on the way to Hierapolis. And I didn't remember seeing that, but I'm assuming that it's field clearing.
Thank you.
Okay, good
Yes.
question. All questions taken. All right. We're moving right along to Ephesus. And this is a picture of the site of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. And I do not recall. I think this is one of Grant's pictures. I'm not sure.
I think so.
Yeah. So this goes back a few years. Ephesus is kind of constructed in two areas. Again, at the top of a hill is sort of the public square, the administrative area, administrative buildings, a little bit of the marketplace, and some lecture halls and whatnot are on the top of the hill in Ephesus. And most tours start in this area. And there's example. This is an example of a sort of a very small, a very tight, intimate meeting area up in that sort of business area and government area. And then you kind of go over the brow of the hill and start down this street toward the sort of the commercial area, the port, the market area, and other houses, and even some temples along this street. It's called Syrtes, and this is kind of what you see. The interesting thing to me is that when Paul was there, the library of Celsius was not there. So we're seeing
That's a Grant picture.
that's no, I do have a Grant picture in here, but you can tell this is the tourist area. There were along here, there were shops, there were small temples and whatnot. This is 1957 or 58. About that same location, the same perspective. And it's amazing to think of the progress that has been made to kind of uncover and reconstruct that area, because this was all excavated for this picture, right? It's not just covered with grass, but some of this stuff has been dug out. So, and of course, the port of Ephesus was down in this area here. Again, looking down at Syrtes toward the bottom, you begin to see a little more of the sort of the character of the city beginning to emerge. This is another temple. Again, typical shop. And the wonderful thing that we saw and noticed was how much they have, the restorers have kept the mosaic street, sidewalks are still there. And they don't let you walk on it. You have to walk on the old original marble street, but just seeing it is kind of amazing.
I saw on Facebook, excuse me, but it goes with that. It showed a Roman road today and up-to-date road today, and it had potholes all over it. The Roman road was still all together, and I tried to copy it to send it to you, but I couldn't.
Oh my.
It was, yeah, it was very truthful the way the Roman roads are.
They were built to last.
They were built to last.
Yeah. Now this again is a temple to Hadrian, the Roman emperor, which again was it had some other use during Paul's time, because Hadrian was 150 years later. However, there are some places that never change. This is the public bathroom, and I had to try. It sits very comfortably, but that is right down near the bottom of the street. One of the places that intrigued us on our first visit, which was undergoing really a lot of extensive archaeological reconstruction or digging out. And one of the joys of being there and the last time, which was what, 2013 or 2014.
12, I think.
That area was open. And so this is what we saw on our last trip. This was an area that could best be described as a cross between a very high-end gated community and a large building that was full of individual owned residences. And it was really amazing to go under that cover and see what was going on with unearthing and trying to sort of save as much as possible and reconstruct as accurately as possible. And so you see all of these different levels, and you could tell that some of them were residents that went up 2 or 3 levels, in the same residence. And then there'd be more above or more below. So it was a pretty amazing sort of housing development. And one of the things I've learned is that the common folks didn't live like this. I mean, it was really the privileged, either governmental or mercantile or whatever, people who had considerable wealth that lived like this. And everybody else apparently rented small living quarters and did most of their other living on the streets in very public spaces. It's amazing what we were able to see there. And of course, I mentioned the Library of Celsius, which Paul would have been just marveled by if he had been there 100 years later. But now this is essentially the trademark of Ephesus. This is what people think about when they think about Ephesus. This is a gate that goes off the side of the courtyard in front of the library that leads into the Agora. This is from up above. The Library of Celsius is down here. This is now called Marble Way, and it runs this way. The library is here, and you begin to see the Agora over here. And just up here ahead of you is the theater, and where we know Paul had some appearances. Okay, moving right along. This is down at street level, the Marble Way. And here is looking back at the library front from inside the Agora area, the public square or the market square. And you can look down and you can see the development of, see along there, the cover, the pillars that held the covering that covered both the store or the shop and the walkway along the sides of the Agora. And again, an amazing amount of restoration going on in this area. And here's a good look at the amphitheater. And we were on our tour again, which was we were on a ship with about 500 or 600 other people.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got to Ephesus, we had a worship service in the theater, and it was quite a distinction to be in there. And our leader spoke without a microphone, and the acoustics were splendid and just wonderful. But it was that was a real fun thing. This is part of the tour group don't mind the woman in the salmon colored stuff close up there. I'm not,
I
I'm not.
proved I was there.
No. This is another look at from up in the sort of toward the top of the theater. And this is where the members of the silver worker, the Workers Guild that made the little statues of Artemis, came to with their beef about Paul and his Christianity stuff that was taking away all their business. They were admonishing some kind of retribution, and the city leaders were saying, don't make waves, and Paul wanted to go talk to him, and it was just it was apparently quite a tizzy in Ephesus. Okay, this is looking down the side of the Agora marketplace over here, going away from the theater toward what was the harbor, which is down in this area. This is where ships on the Mediterranean or Aegean Sea can come this close into Ephesus, and this is now 15 miles from a port on the Aegean, and it's basically because the river has silted in over the years. Who knows what kind of earthquakes have occurred that have shifted the ground level, but it's really to think of this, and ships have gotten much bigger. Okay, so it's kind of interesting to think about what Ephesus being right on the seacoast. Here you are going back down toward the street toward the dock, looking back at the size of the amphitheater and the theater. It's just amazing. And when you finish seeing Ephesus, you feel just like this dog. So every visit was nice, and I think we've been there 3 times or 2 times. But you always see something new and something different. Moving right along, as busy and as spacious as Ephesus is, this is the anti-Ephesus. This is Miletus. It is about 15 miles down the coast from Ephesus, and it was in its day a pretty busy little city with a lot of agricultural areas to the east of it,
and medical,
and it had a medical facility at the time. Still, it was big enough to have its own amphitheater. Nothing like Ephesus, but still very, very nice. This is the market area. You can see, this is what you see to an area that hasn't been very well developed or dug out, reconstructed or redeveloped. So this is what kind of in this day and age, this is 2009, or I don't think it was 2000. I don't think we saw Miletus in 2002. First trip?
First time we were there.
Okay, that was 2002 then. So not much has gone on in the way of restoration or sort of digging out. Now, moving up the coast north of Ephesus, you come to a town that used to be called Smyrna. And Paul would have remembered it as Smyrna. It is now a city called Izmir. And on the high above Izmir, on the top of the hill behind the city, this is about what you see of the metropolis of Izmir. Is the gate and some of the Roman streets.
We also saw some kids who were selling rugs.
Yes, there were rug salesmen, and there were kids playing on in a playground there too. So, and moving further up the coast is Pergamon, and Paul does talk about being here, and it's an interesting city. Again, two-stage city. Up on the hill are the temples and administrative centers. There is a huge amphitheater here, and down in the valley below the Acropolis is a wonderful medical center. Not modern medical center. It was kind of in the tradition of Asclepius. And I think I have some pictures of that in here. But but when you go up to the top and you look down, it's impressive. And of course, they didn't have to do much to build an amphitheater. They just had to get the stones in place. They didn't have to dig much out. There is a small temple here too, but there was at one point a fairly large temple. And I didn't remember to stop here and dig the pictures out. But if anybody has been in Berlin, Germany, and visited the Pergamum Museum, there is a reconstruction of the main temple on the top of that hill, of that temple, which was essentially picked up stone by stone by German.
We still in Ephesus?
No, this isn't Ephesus. This is Pergamum. But they essentially took this temple apart, and what was left of it, and moved it to Berlin, Germany. And it's reconstructed in this Pergamon Museum in Germany. And I'm sure that the Germans are in constant discussion with the Turks about getting it back to Pergamum. Anyway, our next stop is going to be into Greece, and I will be willing. I don't want to bore you completely to tears. So if you would like to stop now, we can stop here and talk about any questions you all have, or we can go ahead and do Greece. I'm going to save Rome for next week for anybody that's willing to do it. So are there any questions or comments or reactions at this point to anybody? And again, I'm working blind unless I stop sharing and see everybody. Yeah, everybody's got to wake up now.
In Ephesus, they said there was a house where the disciple Apostle John lived with Jesus' mother Mary. Did you see that? We didn't.
We did not go there. It was pointed out to us,
and we could have gone if we had chosen to pay a little extra.
Yeah. And the other interesting ruin in Ephesus is the Christian Basilica of St. John, which is kind of away from the old, the original city, closer to what is the modern city of Ephesus.
Yeah, I don't think we saw that either.
Yeah, it's a 5th or 6th century Christian basilica, and it looks almost like you would see, in Rome or someplace like that. So, then I did not, since that was not of the Paul era, I just left those pictures out. But Ephesus has a long history of being a center, and I think it's largely because it was such an important trade center. People just flocked there and came through there and doing trading and moving things and getting from here to there.
Yeah, I will say,
So
JJ has been doing work. And I'm gonna be real, heck.
oh, that's Dawn talking because
Well, I was looking.
I recognize the dog.
I was oh, I was looking at the app of Paul's journeys.
Yeah,
I was looking for the names of the towns and cities he visited and which letters were written from that or to those areas. And I looked up the 7 churches referred to in Revelation.
Revelation. Yeah,
And I was surprised that the ones addressed in Revelation were all
Making sure you were awake.
no, I wasn't of that of Turkey or Asia or whatever that is there. So those were the ones that were written to whom, which we cover that wasn't.
It's in the first few chapters of Revelation.
yeah,
Yeah, I know. No, that's not.
Message to different churches.
different
Yeah.
churches. Yeah,
Which letters did Paul write to those churches?
Well,
well,
he wrote a letter to the Ephesians and one to the Colossians.
Yeah, they weren't the ones on the. That wasn't not Pergamum. Thyatira and
yeah.
Smyrna and.
Well, the Ephesians are not the Ephesians. The Galatians were written to a series of churches. Some of them were the 4 he visited, and there was others in northern Galatia, and Roman Galatia on
Yeah,
that
but
map.
Galatia was more like Derbe and Lystra and those churches.
Derbe, Lystra.
I think. No,
that's-
Pergamum was in the other area.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pergamum was over by the coast,
Yeah,
and
there was a Perga
Re-
also.
Perga was in southern Turkey near the coast.
Yeah.
One of the things that I read as you read a little about Paul's journeys, when he was in Ephesus for like 3 years, almost 3 years, either 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
He served that was kind of his base. And that's how, and he moved along that whole coastal area. And in fact, at one time, crossed the Aegean and made a 3rd visit to Thessalonica and Philippi. So he was a traveling man. He didn't believe in just writing letters. He went to see people, but his base essentially was Ephesus. And as Adam Hamilton pointed out, he rented some space in some kind of a theater or lecture hall along that Marble Way
For teaching.
and teaching and preaching. Yeah. So, like I said, he apparently was a very busy guy.
And he worked too,
Yeah,
making tents.
yeah.
Yeah, he had to do that, I guess, and we'll see when we get to Greece and into Rome, evidence of what he was doing in particularly in the port city, in
Corinth,
Bingo, yeah.
I opened my Bible to the map page here, so
See, I don't have my map. I don't have my Bible or my map page open. So
I also took the liberty of Googling the Pergamon Museum, and that's pretty fabulous. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I tell you what, I'll start next week with some pictures I took at the Pergamum Museum. I made a couple of visits there. So, I'll dig them out and we'll look at those next week too, so you have an idea of what's there.
Very impressive in these pictures I see here.
Yeah, yeah. It's an unbelievable place.
And not only do they have the German and Pergamum, they also have some from Iraq and Iran.
Yeah.
Some,
They took
Gates.
an entire city gate out of one of the old ancient cities in Iraq. So we'll that'll be one I'll add to the program next week, because next week and I think we ought to stop now. But next week I want to cover Greece and Rome, and also, as I said, throw in a little bit of Pergamum for you. So we can do that next week. Is that a thumbs up, Tom?
I guess so.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to mention quickly was that had all those temples or something to Hadrian.
Yeah.
Arches, stuff. He got us. I mean, you know this, but some people may not be aware. He got as far as England, and there's still the ruins of a wall that goes all the way across England in the north, called Hadrian's Wall.
Hadrian's Wall, yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The Roman Emperor Constantine, who followed Hadrian, was in, of all places, what is now Yorkshire, England, and York, England, and was there when he found out he was now the emperor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think that was after Hadrian's death.
Seems like I saw a drama based on that one time.
You know, it's one of those stories you can't make it up. It's you don't think about a person who's likely to be a Roman emperor so far away from the center of
Well, that's not the story I've heard. In Hoc Sigmo Vinces, in this sign conquer. And Constantine saw a big cross in the sky and heard God telling him to put a cross on his soldiers, and he won the battle.
Yep.
And he became emperor and began to Christianize Rome.
Yeah. But he was back up in after he saw that sign, and that was just before a battle in somewhere in France or in Gaul at that time, and he was later on this visit to this expedition in northern England, and I'll have to do some reading on that too myself.
I'll check that out because I think it was the Battle of Milvian Bridge, and I thought it was in Italy.
Oh, that close to home. Okay.
I think so. I mean, the way they instead of having an election, the generals just fought.
Yeah. Well,
Constantine won the battle and he became emperor.
Well, anyway, I'm on your time now, and we'll do this again next week. And as I said, we have been recording this, so I'm going to turn the recording off. If I can figure out where it is, it'll be turned off, and I'll edit it carefully. So anyway, we'll do this again. We'll get through Pergamum, Greece, and Rome.
Bye-bye.
Take care. We'll see y'all.